Hello and welcome to the Person of the Therapist. I'm delighted that you could join us today. Now, I'm feeling delightfully happy that we have two colleagues to share with us their life path, their journey, and some of the touchstones that brought them into the field of mental health, how they use creativity, the imagination in their work, and also their special field, their special population. So with Alisha Denham and Catherine Denham, I want to welcome you both. And let's open up with first defining the field that you're in. So some of our interviewees are psychologists, some are social workers, marriage and family therapists. What is your field and how would you describe your specialization?
I have an MSW, I'm an LCSW, and my specialization would be children and families um, with just kind of your basic, depression, anxiety, those. I don't have like a specialty that I
Mhm.
work with, I have a general mental health population.
So, Kat, when you're working with children, little ones, adolescents, what do you have a special focus? Elementary school?
Yes, so when I was in the office, I'm no longer in an office, but when I was in the office, my love and passion was the 3-year-olds. Like I wanted all the babies. Um, the way they view the world is fabulous. Like everything is amazing. They're independent, they're learning words, I loved just observing 3-year-olds in the playroom and just learning so much from what they
Mm,
were doing. So
mm,
3-year-olds are my
mm,
favorite.
And so I'm guessing you did expressive arts, you did play therapy. Was there an expressive art that you kind of leaned into that you found most valuable with 3-year-olds?
The funny thing is, up until just a little while ago in my life, expressive arts were not something that I embraced. When I would have a kiddo come in and they wanted to draw and create, it was really a little bit of a resistance in me because I didn't identify as somebody who was extremely creative, crafty, but not creative. So for the 3-year-olds, I just really followed their lead. And if they wanted to paint, create, we did, or if they wanted to play house, we did. So I really just followed them.
That's play therapy. That's
Yeah.
really respecting the 3-year-old, trusting them that their stories, their lived experience will really emerge from their creativity, from their telling their story through their art. So even though you didn't define yourself as a specialist in creative expressive therapies, it's like you really took and embraced the very bones and the importance of following those 3-year-olds. And so the
Yeah.
population that you work with now are not 3-year-olds, or you're still doing family systems?
Yeah. So now I do telehealth only, and it's exclusively adults. I mean,
Mhm.
occasionally I have, but mostly adults and dabbling in couples when I have to.
Okay. And so then you can still do some of the wonderful, rich, creative
Yes. Very,
stuff that you have
yeah.
in telehealth. And at every point, you really are still dealing with 3-year-olds, except they have big bodies, right?
Yes, that's
So
so absolutely
the inner child that so needs to be heard and to be seen and
yes.
can have that happen. Great. So I feel a little bit more anchored you're a social worker, and you really are embracing the whole lifespan by
Mhm.
bringing the delight, the joy that I hear in your voice with the 3-year-olds into this work with adults. So, Ash,
Yeah.
where, um, what is your profession, your specialization? Let's get started with there.
So, let me first start by saying thank you for inviting us to do this with you. This is so exciting and putting this out for other professionals or other people that are connecting and interested about the field or even just people who are interested about what we are doing. I think this is necessary and
Yeah.
amazing.
Oh,
Really
good,
cool.
good.
So I am an LCSW. I'm also a registered play therapy supervisor, which so is Kat.
That's great.
And primarily my heart is in working with the teens. So I always, whenever Catherine says that she likes the littles, and I'm like, must be at least this tall in order to hang out with me, like that's just not, we all have gifts, right? And so the
Yes.
littles are not,
Mm,
the teens, especially teenage boys, like that is
mm,
where my heart.
mm,
I ran a group home for adolescents in foster care for a while, and
mm,
I think I really kind of got cemented in the like working with kids in care and things like that. Our daughter is adopted, and so that's another kind of piece of the puzzle
mm,
that is just not only working
mm,
with that population, but also serving my daughter,
mm,
and learning more about her by working with that
mm,
population. So that I think is probably where my heart is the most. Also, I'm super passionate about working with the LGBTQ
mm,
population
mm,
in our area. I get a lot of referrals for those clients, and just kind of holding space and being there for them. That I'm
mm.
clearly very passionate about that as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, working with the sand and creative and doing sand tray stuff and creative arts. Those are kind of where my passions are.
Let's mention right now, though, something very special that you do, and that is the creation of these marvelous minis. So would you both want to comment on how this comes together for you? And maybe, I don't know what you have present ready at hand, if you just like to, because we'll go into the symbols that you brought a bit
Yeah,
later, but would you like to show us then some of the Mama Owl's minis?
yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm
We
gonna
have a
grab a
handful.
couple. Yeah, I'm gonna actually grab one.
So
Of these
how this came about was accidental, as most probably things are occasionally. So we were trained in sand tray, and it took me a little while to really understand it, embrace it. I would do it in the room, but I struggled a little bit. Alisha, after our first training, was there. Like
Mm,
it spoke to her so strongly. And so back to the group home, we were working in a community mental health setting, no budget. And
mm,
the kids that she was working with, the teenagers, they really needed more than just what her play therapy supply of toys
yeah.
was offering.
my Care Bears from the 80s that I
Right.
still had left over.
Right.
So they were like, great, but I really need like these stronger pieces. And so Alisha, being a creative at heart, I joke that she is an artist by nature and a therapist by trade. So it's backwards now, but she decided to start making some of these pieces with the boys. And once
Mm,
she kind of out of paper and clay and
I mean, we
whatever she
made,
could scrap
I think the
together.
very first mini that I made was a tornado that I
Mhm,
had taken a piece of paper and rolled it up like a snow cone cup,
mhm.
and then I had one of my boys wrap hot glue around it like it was swirling. We grabbed a coaster off of my desk and put it as a base, and then I let him paint it like it was like gray colored, and all of that, and we went back and actually used it in a session.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
And so out of that, people, just kind of our local team, was like, "Ooh, I want one of those. I want one of those." And so now we make those full time, and we've graduated from paper to resin, so
yeah,
that
we
it's a
can
little more
actually,
sturdy.
yeah.
oh, yeah, bring it right up to your camera so we can see the detail. Isn't that beautiful? Look at that fire. That's beautiful. It's almost, I see some iridescence on the
Yeah,
on the bottom
yeah.
flames there. That's
It's just the way
gorgeous.
we use the
Yeah.
pigment in it. Mhm.
That would
So
be a piece I would want.
yeah, I got you. I got you. Yeah, so it's just one of those things too where it's we're able to take it and create it in our hands, and use the energy from our hands and our heart, and actually sculpt it, and then from that point we create our own silicone molds here in our
Mhm.
studio. You can see.
There's another one.
Yeah, and
Oh, look at
uh,
that. Beautiful,
Yeah,
beautiful.
And
Alicia's talent is really um,
You
and
really
from that
are.
we can actually reproduce the original clay piece using industrial strength resin so that they're not fragile. So,
Mm,
whether adults using them or
kid. Yep.
3-year-olds, they're not delicate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
beautiful.
So
All right, let's
okay.
get into your life. What brought you to the field of mental health? And at the same time, not only touchstones, maybe something in your life or some self-insight, but why are you doing what you do? How did you arrive here? So that we can really get a sense of, that's your journey. And that's a very personal experience that brings the gifts that you are to your clients. By the way, do you want to stay where you're hailing from?
oh yeah,
Yeah,
Pensacola, Florida.
Pensacola. Yeah,
Florida.
yeah.
Okay.
Right
Okay.
in the panhandle.
Great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes. So your life path.
So I remember in grad, my professor said that he had written a book called The Call to Social Work. And it was his really firm belief that every social worker had a calling that they identified early on in age. I didn't feel like that was me because initially I was going to be a lawyer. And then I lost a mock trial my junior year in high school and realized I can't lose so successfully. So I switched because I wanted to help people. Um, and I decided I was going to be a psychiatrist and then realized how much schooling that was. So I just stepped it down a little and I was like, therapist is exactly where I need to be. So I entered the social work program and actually had to do it twice because initially, I guess I have a little bit of a journey. Initially, I was never going to be a therapist. I really wanted to help people, but I also envisioned myself as more of a boss. So I wanted to be like at the top, making massive, like really macro changes. I'm I'm a systems thinker. My brain thinks in systems pictures.
Hmm.
And so every time there was like this little problem with something, I could see where the bigger issue lied all the way to
Ooh.
this big thing. So initially I went into the in Arizona State, they have different tracks and concentrations. So my first one was in planning, administration, and community development because I really thought I was going to run like the United Way and just
Mm,
make this world.
mhm, mhm.
And then I realized that to get there, you actually have to have a license. So then I had to go back to grad school and get the clinical portion. And then I just ended up being a therapist and never really advanced and realized that I could actually make changes on a macro level in my little tiny office. So I ended up just staying at community mental health for my entire in office career. It's only been the last,
Mm.
well, whenever the pandemic happened, that I've done telehealth and worked in private practice. So that's how I became a social worker.
Mm. Well, I want to sort of underscore the framing. Something that stuck out to me was your competency with seeing the larger picture. That you could take, as you mentioned, little moments, even little incidences or problems, and follow that thread out to see the larger, more problematic, systemic issue that that probably keeps feeding what is problematic at the ground level. So then when you're working with families or individual clients, I imagine that your ear is really tuned into them and to that specific situation, but I also imagine that you continue to hold the ability to really see the larger, where did this come from?
Yeah,
What in this little one or this adult's life maintains this kind of oppression or alienation or trauma?
yeah.
And is, would I be correct in saying you continue that connection?
Absolutely. And in when I was in community mental health, that was really challenging in terms of the weight that I had that it put on me. Because at that level, a lot of those individuals are struggling with basic needs. And so my brain just
Mm,
always could find the reason that we're here, the reason that we are stuck in this place as the clients were. As I've moved into private practice, some of that has shifted, and I'm grateful for this experience because that community mental health is really challenging, and you do become disenchanted and overwhelmed at times with change. And so in private practice, I don't have anyone really whose basic needs are not met. So we can advance to like, oh, so we're looking at,
mm,
this or sexism or like other macro issues that can contribute. It's just that I don't have so many threads that I have to follow to the basic needs. We can just follow certain ones. And so it's a little bit easier on me in the
yes.
private practice. But yeah, my
So
brain
again,
still thinks.
so the underbelly there, the current is also the restraints, the limitations that larger systems um have in place that limit what you could do in addition to feeling the overwhelm of some of the very desperate, very, very basic needs that people had. But the part of the stress and the lockdown, as it were, that the part of what might even alienate you being in some systems is their constraint. They're holding you and limiting what you can do. And now you see that you are making change with one person that ripples out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Kat. Ash.
Yeah. So for me, I think your professor was right. So I knew from a very young age. I mean, I was probably middle school whenever my peers at school were coming to me and saying, "Hey, can we go sit under this stairwell so we can have our session?" Seriously, like that was happening in middle school. And
Mhm.
so I was always that kid that was like, "Let me hold the space, let me be here," right? And
Mm,
so I have my struggles and ups and downs with mental health from a young age. So I am very transparent about it. I think it's part of what makes us unique and beautiful
mm,
as a business, as a family, is that we are just try to authentically put it out there, as best we can.
yeah.
And so whenever I was a teenager struggling with depression and anxiety, again, I think it gave me a lens of, I never really felt like I was alone in it. And so
Mm.
always, it sounds altruistic, it's kind of selfish. It made me feel better to help other people, right? As I was young. And so it was always one of those things I knew. I mean, I declared my major as social work from go and knew that eventually I was going to land being a clinician, being a therapist. I would go to grad school and that was going to be my journey. So I never really doubted what I was going to do or how I was going to go about it. My heart was
Mm.
there from the time I was in middle school.
And I can verify this because before we were married, Alisha and I were coworkers, and I was the therapist on the team, and Alisha was the case manager. And she thought I was such a great therapist. I'm really smart.
She
Like
is. She's a
I'm
great
very
therapist.
smart, and so I know a lot of things up here, right? And so because of
Mm.
that, she would always refer her clients to me. And as a case manager, Alisha struggled.
Oh, I was horrible.
And
I was
so I
horrible as a
went to
case
our
manager.
boss one day and I was like, you have to stop giving me her referrals. We are not a great team. She can't keep up with me, all the things, right? And really what the issue was is that and so I thought I struggle after age 10. The population of teens, especially girls, huge challenge for me. It's my own inner child work. I get it. I already know. And the issue really was that as a case manager, before she even had her grad school education or license, she was such a better therapist
Mhm.
than I,
Mm.
because of how
Mm.
she can hold space, be present, have that empathy, that co-regulation. She just was killing it. And so I would walk in and they were like, no, absolutely. I didn't even have to say anything. They're like, no, we're not working with you. And I'm like, okay. So I can verify that Alicia's always had that nature about her and skill level.
And
Mm.
it's I'm very different. You are a very big picture thinker,
Mm-hmm.
but for me, that very last statement that you made, man, it landed. So whenever you said it's kind of a ripple effect, so I've always used that analogy. I can't change the world by myself, but I definitely
Mhm.
step in, help you change what's going on in your life, and then you can take that and help someone else, and then they
Mm.
can help someone else. So for me, I am a very micro kind
Mhm.
of heart-led,
Personal.
yeah, one-on-one. I
Mhm.
the big groups and the big crowds and making massive change, like that's beautiful, and if that is your calling, man, step into it. But for me, it really is about, let me just be here with you, and then know that you will at the end of this have the strength to be here for the next, and then them for the next. And so yeah, that's kind of, I've always kind of known that that was going to be my path.
So much of heart and compassion, intuitive resonance with right under the stairwell of the intermediate
Yeah.
school, right up to your clients now, and then the power of lifting others up, the power of empowering them so
Yeah.
that you could continue, even being so mindful of your own struggles, whatever those were, that both of you have embraced. This is beyond self-care. It is about really becoming clear about who you are and what you want to, what is meaningful,
Yeah.
and how to live in that meaningfulness.
Yeah.
And creativity is not only the depth, but the creativity is so important. We could take a look at your symbols that you brought, but and then after that, and we could go on forever. There might be an example from a client that taught you a wisdom that you both would like to share with us. I think we learn so much from clients
Yes.
and as play therapist supervisors. I'm just imagining the depth and the creativity and the hope that you are giving all those that are striving to do exactly what you do, which is to ripple out healing and acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Symbol time.
Yeah.
Okay. So this one is called
Cooking.
Sit With Me. And it's a person who's a
Mhm.
chair and has
Oh,
all of just kind of beautiful little
Mhm.
mm,
and when I envision who I am as a therapist now, this really lands. This is what I wish I had known 20 years ago, that
mm,
one of the most important things that we do as therapists is honor this client's story, because my brain sees such big picture and because I'm really impatient. um, I struggled during my in-office career in valuing their individual story. I know so much more now as
mm,
we're
mhm,
our art business, and as I've learned, other skill sets, I now understand that that story was an honor for them to share with me, and it was what we were trying to get back to. They wanted to go back into this time where things were, when they knew who they were, or when things seemed easier, or all
mm,
along the way. That's kind of
mhm,
where the path is lying. And so when I think about who I am as a therapist, I feel like this is who I am trying to be now. Um, it wasn't who I understood myself to be right out of grad school. So I think we call this piece Sit With Me. And I think it just kind of really embodies the space that we hold, um, the gift that we can give by just listening to their story, and finding value in it for them too, because sometimes they
mm.
don't feel like there's value in their story. um,
Yeah.
and so that's where I am aspiring to be, is this wise person who just holds that space. The other piece that I envision as a therapist now, again, my my understanding of who I am as a therapist has completely shifted since the pandemic. since, and I don't really know why. I don't think it has anything to do with the pandemic. I really think it has to do with our business, our Mama Al's business. And what I've learned from
Mm.
Alisha, I've seen the power of just being with someone in a way that I never really got to see in my office, which speaks more about me than anything else. So this is the other piece that I really
Bring it.
envision.
Yeah,
It's called I've Got You.
I've got you.
Mhm. I always looked at myself, I think, looking back, as like I understood on a cognitive level that we are journeying together, but I don't think my heart really knew what that looked like. And because my gift really is learning and like kind of academia, like that's not a struggle and I love to learn. I think even though I knew we're together, I still probably operated as if let me lead you, right? So like let me show you the way. And had I really mastered this concept of, oh no, we're going to do this together. I don't know more than you. I have different knowledge, but it's not more than yours and it's not more valuable than
Mm.
yours. I really mastered this, 15 years ago. Um I think I would have probably had more. I don't know. I don't know what the success is because you don't really hear back from the clients so much. So
Right.
I don't, I think that I just would have felt like I was doing um, what we were really supposed to be doing as therapists and
Mhm.
holding, walking alongside them and really valuing what they were doing. So,
Kat, would you, we'll take a few minutes here. Would you hold both of your figures right up to the,
yeah.
yeah. Now, what happens if you turn them to face, if you turn them to face each other?
Ooh,
There we
yeah.
go. Now,
Oh,
what, what beautiful potential if
yeah.
one of these were to sit on the
Mm,
chair and have a
mm,
conversation in that Gestalt way with
yeah.
the other? Or what if they both sat in the chair? Or what if they sat in, became the chair and allowed the one, the holder, to stand outside and to be heard as a different experience than than holding and listening?
Right. Wow.
That's
That
beautiful.
is, yes,
So
that's
Wow.
what,
much,
yeah,
so
Yeah.
that's
much there.
powerful. Yeah,
Now,
Mhm.
absolutely.
and you know that we could go on forever with that, but I'll do one more miniature
Okay.
demonstration. Take the seated one, yes,
Mhm.
and facing it toward you. Oh,
Okay.
there she goes. And now, if you and you're going to keep the following silent, but if your 3-year-old self were to climb up in that seat and to be held and to be so nestled and intimately embraced, safe, how would she feel?
Mhm.
Okay. And then you know that we would continue with your 13-year-old self and then move to your 53, 83-year-old self. So we can use these very wonderful symbolic images to do developmental work and to really gently but powerfully using silence and using voice to tell the very stories that you now embrace how important one story is. And then wow, I can almost hear the one that you're holding speaking back to you, giving you appreciations and validations for who Catherine is and who Catherine has become. So all of these, yes. So how is, we're going quickly, and normally if we were doing this in therapeutic process, we would gently go to allow the 3-year-old and the 13-year-old and on. But just how is this for you right now?
Powerful, emotional, raw, vulnerable. I feel very seen. Um,
Seen or naked?
both.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
And really beautiful. Like,
Mm.
I feel very beautiful in that this piece will now sit on my desk forever because
Mm,
looking at me,
It's
holding me.
yeah.
beautiful, beautiful. And that's the power of these pieces. And of course, there's a lot we could do with the collaborative piece with the two that are together. But we're going to do another video. We have to. And so we could dig into some more of this. Thank you so much, Catherine. Now, Ash, what did you bring? How does meaning emerge from yours?
So you're going to think that we actually talked about this, but we didn't. But the idea of holding their stories, that was exactly the same thing that came up for me. That's so wild. I should have went first. No, I'm just
Sorry.
kidding. But for me, because my heart is so drawn to the teen young adult population,
Yeah.
um, as a therapist, I take a very kind of protective, safe space
Mm,
stance, if you
mm,
will.
mhm.
I mean, think about a young adult or a teen. I mean, this is true for all clients, but again, my population and my lens is um, think about them coming to you and for the first time really sharing their story. You're the first one that has heard like some of the depths of the insides of their soul and how they view themselves and the things that they have been through and all of that. So I think for me it's a very let me hold your story in such a
Mm,
safe way
mm.
that I'm safe for you to leave it here or take it with you, whatever you need. But if you need to leave this here with me, I will keep it safe until we come back together again. So for me as a therapist, this is kind of how I view myself.
Ooh. Describe your figure.
So this is actually so we call it Pandora's box. This is a very new
Oh,
figure. So actually you're the first
Yep,
person that's
no
seen
one's
it, Dee.
seen it.
So but it has been so special to me to go through the process of making this and creating it. But it's an actual so
yes.
it's a let's see, we can
Mm.
open it.
Ah,
So it is just kind of the guardian of the story. And so when we say Pandora's box, for some people, they might think, it's negative, but it also is just that it's that story that
yes.
deserves to be guarded,
Hmm.
the story that deserves to be held and needs to be. So that, yeah, so that's kind
So
of,
the dragon is
yeah.
kind of
Do you want to move
coming.
it up to the camera so we can see it the details a little more closely? Yeah. Yes.
So you can
Uh-huh.
actually busting out
Yes.
like
Oh,
he was inside of the box
oh, look at
and
those. Yeah.
yeah, the story
Yeah.
was so had to move out of it in order to hold that space appropriately.
What a holder and a grounding. The way those feet are planted, very grounded. And I love the spine that you've created. So many metaphors that immediately start to come up with that openness and yet protection to set up emotional boundaries, containment, and then at the same time, the guardian outside to see what is to come, to welcome the stories that need to be held. And I love the way you phrased that they could leave their stories, their life experience, those moments with you. And
Mhm.
I can imagine them even placing that part of their experience, that part of their life in Pandora's box. And then now I begin to hear the conversation. What is this one saying? So let's play with this for a moment. If this one were to speak, to turn to us and say something to us, what would it say? And go ahead
Mm.
and bring it right back to the camera so it can speak to us. And you're the translator because we're not necessarily able to hear its language, but because you had that special skill, what is it saying to us? What does it want us to know, to hear today?
So what it's saying, what he's saying is, I am the guardian. And what he is also communicating is that there's a reason why he has wings. So initially, whenever I was sculpting him, I didn't put the wings on and it just didn't feel complete. And so he is saying that not only is he the guardian, but he has the ability to take it higher, to take us higher, or to stay planted on the ground. That just because he's the guardian, we are the ones that navigate where he goes. And so
Hmm,
it's
hmm,
up to him to protect. And should we need to go higher, we can. And should we need to stay planted, and he's capable of doing either.
Almost like it reminds me of a turtle that one can pull inward and contain and hold within, and at times be out there. What is the
Yeah.
second? Oh, let's build some connection here.
Yeah. So the second piece, this is a newer piece as well.
Oh
So
my heavens, slow down here. What do we have here? Oh my, Alicia, what do we have here?
so this piece is called Get Out of Your Head. So me, another way that I kind of see myself and my clinical skills and abilities to work with people is um, in the ability to push them outside of their head. So what I mean by that is sometimes for me, and I'm going to kick back to my struggles with anxiety, you know, as an artist, I am quick to say like, you don't have to have a box. Color outside the box, scribble the lines all the way around, right? We hear that. Um, but as a therapist and as a creative therapist, I want to push people to know that sometimes this is the box and it's okay to step outside of it. It's
Mm,
okay to um, color outside the lines, if you will, to step outside of the anxiety, step outside of the misfires in our brain, step outside of what we are seeing from behind our eyes and look at it this way. Get a different
mm,
perspective
mm,
from your maybe broken thoughts or your um, the things that are keeping you locked inside of here, you
mhm,
know?
mhm.
And so, yeah, that's
You
that's
know, to amplify what you've just to uh, how the committee in the head, the judgmental committee can be so
yeah.
demeaning and limiting from way before 3 years old, all through all those voices throughout life. You know, the injunctions, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough, you're not this, that, and the other thing, or the reverse, you are disappointing, you are stupid, you are unwanted and unloved. That image that you're holding from the front side, I see the individual separating from the cacophony in the head, and just letting it be in the back there so that their full integrity of who they are can begin to separate. So it's not severed
Right.
because there's still richness and beauty and depth and such the stories, the lived experience, all of those emotions and memories, they're still there, but we can kind of step outside as you've illustrated, as you've pulled that together, step outside to well, who am I? Separate from
Mhm.
all. That's what comes up for
Yeah.
me as you
Yeah.
as you show that. Now, what happens when we put them together? Let's see what happens when they encounter each other.
Ooh.
Oh my goodness. What do you immediately both see right here?
Oh man. I see this like eye to eye, like firmly planted either way. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see this one as really like the way that their arms are kind of down and like in this really strong kind of
Mm.
here I come.
Ooh, ooh,
This I now see as gentler.
Oh
As these
wow.
two face
mm,
each other, this one's like,
oh,
this to you. Are you ready? And this one's like, come on, I'm
Yeah.
ready. I'm going to hold this for you.
I'm safe and strong and
Right.
also
Mhm.
soft and
Yeah.
gentle.
This one is
Yeah.
not afraid of
Oh,
this
boy.
one. When you move it though, this one seems a little intimidating, scary, whatever. But when you bring this one
It is a
to it,
different
it
feeling
really,
to
I'm
have
Yes,
seeing this as
yes. And the
different.
compassion, there's almost like the way the head of I'll call it a dragon, the way the head of the Pandora there is down. I'm coming, I'm bending down to be with you. And then
Yeah.
look at the back and then the container and how much of that, of what has been in the red being
Oh,
possibly brought to the
The weight
container.
of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
almost.
Or yes,
Than, oh,
yeah, yeah. And the conversation that might be happening, what do you imagine one is saying to the other?
So for me, I imagine this one saying, I have a really heavy load. I have a lot. Are you capable of holding this? All of this that I'm dragging behind me, all of this that I'm trying to step outside of, all of this that is weighing me down. Are you capable of holding it? And I feel like this one is almost, as we were talking, it almost feels like it's bowing, right?
yeah.
In like reverence,
Oh,
That's what
oh,
saying,
I,
not only am I capable of holding it, but I'm capable of holding it safely and in a reverent
and honored.
way. Yeah, I'm capable of
So
honoring it.
I see me and Alisha.
oh,
Oh,
oh, oh.
So I'm not this person for anyone on the earth except for Alisha. For whatever reason we work, we are just I'm really good up here and she's really good right here. So together
Oh.
we are great as a
team.
human.
Yeah,
Oh, as a team. So I see this as what we do all the time.
so true.
I say this, I carry the weight of Alisha and she carries the weight of the world. And it just
Yeah, it's true.
is true. Like she just holds so much space for so many people, not
Mm,
even clients, like yes, clients, but also in the work
mhm,
that she does every day. And so at the end of the day or
mm.
at the end of whatever struggle there is, because it's usually up here for her, um, she gives that to me. I hold it and then it releases it from her and she
Yeah,
can go back to healing the world.
it's accurate. Yeah.
But you're honoring in this partnership, you are honoring each other, the tenderness, the wounds, and also the powers and brilliance, which comes from your depth, which comes from that mutual powerful respect, and a lifting up and honoring the differences between you, the gifts that come together to hold you both, that you bring not only to your clients, but that you bring to the world, the hope from that larger context that you were talking about, Catherine, the demoralizing, diminishing social, cultural, and political arrangements that cut through the heart and through the gut of those
Mhm.
who live through being alienated and marginalized, who are feeling left out, who the adolescents, and then all the way through the adults, and how you both then nurture and spark that more insights, more depth on. There we go. I think the internet kind of scooped away from us,
Yes.
but I'm glad you're back.
I think we had
Oh,
like a power surge start, like everything. That was crazy.
yeah,
Sorry.
Yeah.
yeah, that
Like
was,
the lights and everything
Yeah.
surged.
whoa,
Wow. Lots of energy going on here.
that's right, that's right. Let's take a look at an example of
Okay.
the learning experience, the wisdoms that you've learned from a client. Um, Alisha, what comes to mind for you? An example.
So I was working at a charter school. Um, if, I mean, it was kind of like a last ditch effort for schooling for these kiddos in our county. So it was a rough school, but there was a little 8-year-old African American boy that was, I mean, he he was a spitfire, firecracker. There was not really any other clinician that had had a whole lot of success working with him. And the first time I laid my eyes on him was he was stripped naked in the timeout room and was inviting anyone who would possibly dare to come in and hang out with him. And so my supervisor at the time was like, "This is your new client." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yay." So, long story short, I ended up working with this little guy for about 2 years. And I ended up being kind of the only safe connection that he had with an adult. Whenever he left, ended up moving, he ended up like, I think moving somewhere up north, maybe New York or something. I don't know. I remember him being so tearful. And at this time, he was about 10 years old. And we went from throwing things in the classroom, screaming profanities, screaming that he hated the teachers, lots of threats, to I don't want to leave. And this is safe here for me. And so, I can remember like the day that, he left and moved away, I was heartbroken, not because of him moving, but because of what he had taught me. I was heartbroken that that experience had to shift and become something different. It was a story of a client that I had worked with in the past, and that learning process and that gift that him and I as counselor and student had created, this nest, as you say, or cocoon of safety for him. And so, and just the richness and beauty and wisdom that had come into my life from working with him. I was a brand new clinician working with this client. I mean, he was one of my very, very first clients. And even though I don't have a huge heart for the littles like that, that little one just, I don't know, maybe it was the spunk that he had, maybe it was the wild and crazy behaviors, but man, it was just that last interaction that I had with him solidified in my mind, and most importantly in my heart, that the power of being a therapist comes in the relationship and the connection. That's it. That's what it all boils down to. At the end of the day, um, being one human that is capable of being safe and connected to another one, that's the power that we hold as clinicians. And so that was what he taught me, and I will never forget that little one. I mean, that was a powerful connection and lesson. And so that, I think, the beauty of that being one of the very first cases that I had as a therapist, and seeing how powerful that was. And it wasn't like I had like all these amazing techniques to teach him and all of this blah blah blah. When he would be put in the timeout room, I would just go and sit until he was ready to sit. I would just, "Hey man, is it okay if I give you a hug today? Seems like you had a rough day. Please, Miss Alisha, can you give me a hug?" I mean, it was just the power of connection. That was it. And that is the biggest piece of wisdom that I would give any new clinician or clinician that's been in the field for decades.
Yeah.
Your connection with your client will determine their success. So,
Absolutely.
What I'm imagining is someone might be viewing and saying, well, that sounds good, but what did you actually do? And I hear two or three things in there. You listened, you went where nobody else would go, in that courage and innocence that comes with really wanting to be there, to be fully present, and connection on so many levels. So if for those who are hungry for, give me something else that you did or said, what would you tell them?
I can tell you that one of the biggest things, especially for this kiddo, because of his socioeconomic surroundings, because of the trauma that he was coming from, one of the most important key things that I did for him was be a non-judgmental safe space. Like being able to hold his story in his words and in his way without any of my judgment, and being curious and
Mm.
engaging him and inviting him to talk when he wanted to talk. And when he didn't, we just played or we just sat. I literally cannot like emphasize enough how important it is to lean into that whole like client centered uh
Yeah.
space, letting them lead. Give them the lead. Like you don't even need to hold it. You're not leading them. You are letting them take the reins. This is their story. So allow them to be the author and editor of that story. It's not our job to edit their story. It's not our job to show them where they could do better. You know, it's our job to hold the space and to let them have the leads and make sure that they feel like they're in control of their story. So that's a huge part of, I think, his success. And of course we did, because of his age, the play therapy and those
Yeah.
types of things, but the healing came in the letting him be the author and editor of his story.
You can use play therapy or any kind of expressive art till the cows come home. If one is not present, if one is not authentic,
Sure.
then what's the point? And so something I did hear in there that I think is important is one way for therapists to keep out judgmental or assessment or whatever may be separating and distancing is to use curiosity, because
Yeah.
curiosity shifts and allowed you to say, I don't know you. I
Right.
don't know your life world. And you stayed in curiosity, and that's a form of presence, of
Hmm.
immediacy, and of and your openness rather and to because judgment, we live in a world where judgment
Yeah.
can seep in. So how do we how you kept some safe boundaries around that was you kept your clinical head, but at the same time you set everything, it felt as you were describing it, that you set everything to prioritize, to lift up, and to hand over. This is your story. I'm here not to control it or interpret it or determine in something clinical about it, but to really hear it. And I think right there, your authenticity and presence were so healing for him.
Yeah, it was amazing to see how powerful the transition was. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Alicia, so Catherine, what memory comes up for you? What incident, what wisdom would you like to share with us from an example?
So, um, a lot of, I think, what influenced me as a therapist was my time in residential. And I think not any specific client, but just this overall kind of theme that, and it's cliche, but it's just true. They really don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Hmm.
And I saw it over and over and over. And until I was in residential, um, I would have probably identified as like strict behaviorist,
Mhm,
even probably would have been a behavior analyst if I had known what that was, just because that's how my brain works. It's
mhm,
logical.
mhm.
And that makes sense to me. But I did see behavior modification to the extreme in residential. That's all it is, really.
Right.
And I saw how staff were injured, how other clients were
Hmm.
injured,
Damaging
how
to the client.
the recidivism rate. And so I learned then that there's something missing in the approach of behavior modification. And it wasn't until I left that environment and then went to an outpatient that I understood that it's a combination of these
Mhm,
things. Yes, it's a combination of knowledge of, behavior or cognitive or whatever, but it equally, and that's where I feel like I missed that in grad school. And I went to two different ones and still never heard it. Um, we miss that equally as important as our skill set is our presence, authenticity, and connection.
Mm.
It's it's like air and water. You have to have both. And I saw how my clients would be able to breathe in the playroom after I left residential, because I had such a different understanding of what therapy was then. And I was so much more comfortable in who I was, because I knew then after I left, I don't need to have the answer for this parent. Like literally whatever behavior modification I could recommend, they can find on a self-help book. I mean, a self-help shelf in a bookstore.
Yeah.
You can read this. And I would say that to them, like, I'm going to give you, you can also find this elsewhere. Here's the thing I'm going to give you that you can't find elsewhere. And that is a safe space, non-judgment. We're going to explore this together. You're not alone. And that ability to kind of give hope that they are not alone, dare I say, was more powerful than whatever knowledge and worksheet and handout I had. So I think that the lessons I learned from clients was really, they don't need that high level of knowledge right away. Like maybe as we work through some things, that is helpful. Initially, most clients need a safe, authentic, regulated therapist who has done their own work, who is safe with their own emotions, like they know how to handle their own stuff, but manage it in a healthy way. And that person is bigger, stronger, safer to hold what they're about to give you, because they're overwhelmed and they are at a loss. If they are in your office, they're at a loss. It's very rare that a client's like, I've not tried any techniques, so I just came straight to therapy. It is, I've never had that. So if they're in your office, if they show up at all, that amount of vulnerability is a privilege and an honor to hold with no judgment, and to refrain from giving them your laundry list of, here's my credentials, here's my skill set. Don't do those things. Not initially. We need to get there. So I think what I've learned is it's me. Yeah. It's me that is the most important thing for them, because they can't get that anywhere else.
Yeah. That authenticity that you bring, the integrity too of who Catherine is. This is who I am. I am here for you. And how healing just that can be for somebody coming in lonely, lost, alienated by their family or school, all of the pain and suffering that we're aware of, that starts very early, And so I'm appreciating right now, both of you, in that bringing yourself as a person. And Catherine, as you pointed out to those parents, you can read this, but I'm going to be a human being that will be honest, that will hold up truth and hold their feet to the fire, to be present. And what a gift that is for any parent or teacher that may come to you and learn, okay, I'm enough. I'm good enough to be here. And
you
not
have
all, yeah.
Like there's a fine balance of, let me be real with you. Like my client, my child also acts out. There's a fine balance of sharing just enough to make it relatable, but not too much that they think that, well, what am I coming to you for if you can't do your own thing? So being able to keep it real, but also keep it safe, because I still know how to do this with you. I can hold this for you, is what they really are looking for. Someone who can carry this weight of the world with them and not give up and not let them down. I think that is really helpful.
How do you keep give us an example of how you keep that safety, the boundaries, while you're really nourishing and encouraging the alliance of trust and honoring their stories, that who they are.
So before I married Alisha, my boundaries were like Fort Knox. So there was no personal revelation. There was no like, you and I have had the same experience. I really
Mhm.
just was so armored up that, and I was not going, I just, in my head, they emphasized in grad school so much of this be professional boundaries. You don't, share too much of yourself. So I did that to the extreme after Alisha, and I could see that, oh, boundaries are in place to keep clients safe. And also boundaries are not the same for every person because it depends on you as a therapist. It depends on the client's ability. So that fine line is, and so this is my marker forever. Like, this is what is my guideline. If I'm leaning on the client with my story, I've gone past the line. If I'm sharing the story as a way to help them understand, I really did have this, or we are not that different, or you're looking at me as if I have it all together, and let me tell you that's not true, and this is the reality. As long as what I'm sharing is helping the client and not serving my own need to vent, process, unload, I'm comfortable with what I share in the session. If at any point I feel like I just leaned on them, then it's, I think, a boundary crossing.
I'm wondering right now if you both have an example or advice for therapists dealing with the clients who are coming to them who could benefit from your wisdom, not only through your marriage and your parenting, but also an understanding of the richness of diversity, as well as the suffering and the woundedness that comes up. So what advice for those who are familiar or who may not be familiar with the lived experience of being in a rich, collaborative marriage and business and parenting, how you bring this all together?
Oh, that's a great question. I think I'm going to say, as far as like wisdom or advice to throw out there, I think it, man, Dee, you might have stumped us. That's a great
Yeah.
one.
So what advice do we have for therapists or
Sure.
for clients?
Oh,
Yeah.
both. Therapists for
Great.
sure, but also
Okay.
for anybody watching would be great. Yeah.
Like how we manage our life together collaboratively?
I think for me, it's just that keeping things honest and real about where you are, keeping
Mm,
things, if today she wants to get out in the studio and, hey, we got these orders that we need to get out, or hey, you have this client and this client lined up, but I know that in my heart I'm in what I call a dark and twisty kind of place. My anxiety is amped up, or my depression is kind of, presenting for that day. I know that if I come out in the studio, I'm going to drop stuff. I'm going to, drop my airbrushes. I'm going to spill
mhm,
paint, whatever.
mhm.
If I'm in a place, a headspace that I have a client, but I know I can't hold their space today because my space is heavy. Being honest with my partner and my wife and my best friend of today, I'm not capable of meeting the goals that we've set for the day. And what I need today is just to be held, or I just need to, Netflix and chill today, or just being authentic in where you are, even being able to say, hey, today's a rough day, so I am going to go ahead and see this client because I feel like I can hold the space, but I might need you to hold some space for me after. you
Wow,
know
beautiful.
that has, I think, for us, one of the strengths that we have found in our flow is being really authentic and genuine in where we are mentally, heart wise, whatever, So
Um, I think it's a little different. The advice I would give is a little different on my end.
always.
And that would be, so it was discovered really, I was well into my 30s before I understood that I had autism. Up until then, the world and I did not really get along. I had lots of conflicted relationships, lots of hostile interactions.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah, lots of overwhelm. I didn't
Mm.
know. Once I was diagnosed, I was like, oh, this world makes so much sense. A little, now that I understand that it doesn't make sense, that makes sense.
Mm.
And because of, I think, being on the spectrum, I've always lived a very authentic way. I don't know, nor do I understand um, not being authentic and honest. So when Alisha and I got together, what I brought was your feelings matter, your truth matters, and who you are is really important for us to have access to, all, like who you authentically are at every moment. What she brought to me was the vulnerability piece of, we do not have to do it all perfectly all the time. We're allowed to be like, today it's just not going to happen. I had never lived in a world where I didn't just achieve everything that I wanted all the time. And it's not fun. That world of perfectionism isn't, there's no living there. This is what I explained to Alisha. I was really like a successful adult, but I didn't have any color in my life.
Mm.
And marrying her brought in the living, like the experience, the not just going through the motions, but really feeling things. And I think the advice, because we really can't be too far away from each other. And there's a couple reasons. It's not because we're codependent and unhealthy. We offer each other something that we need to exist in the world in our most authentic self. Alisha is my social navigator, and I am Alicia's shield. And for those reasons, we work together, we are together all the time. And as long as we honor what the other person brings and value it as equal to what I bring, this is really a me issue, never a Alisha issue. Sometimes I think I offer more and have more value. And then I have to be reminded that we do this thing together. So as long as we honor what the other person brings, value it equal to what we bring, and then allow the other person to exist in their natural state, that is the one thing that Alisha has, my whole system has breathed and regulated. Once she was like, how you exist, you don't need to apologize for it. And I'm never embarrassed by you. I say things and do things that really need an explanation sometimes. And she's so comfortable with who she is that she does not put any pretense on me to be anything other than I am. And that allows for both of us to just breathe and exist. And that's what works for us, is that we allow that for each other and respect the differences and the strengths.
So know who you are.
Know who you are.
Know who your partner is. Know what your strengths are, what you bring to the table.
Yep.
Know what they bring to the table, and lift each other up.
Yep. That's great.
There
Summary.
we go. Yes.
It is. And I hear that as wisdom for therapists, for parenting, for those in education, for counselors, and, just being a human being just in the partnership and in relationship, and deepening it, making it truly authentic, and so much freedom and space, so much respect. Sounds like a great way to raise a child.
Yeah. And I can tell you, it's so funny because whenever you say raising a child, it's like in my head, I'm thinking, what advice would I throw out as a parent, just to other parents, right? And so I think what we do so well as moms, also sometimes kind of bites us, right? Because I
Mm.
think that part of the beauty of our little one is that we have given her a voice.
Wow.
Her voice matters in this
Mhm.
family. Her thoughts matter, her feelings matter, her interests matter, her silly matters, her serious matters. She has a voice to come say, "Hey, mom, the way that
Mm,
you just said that made me feel defensive." And boy, does she use
Mhm.
those
Yep.
therapeutic words that she has heard from us so well.
Mhm.
right.
So, it's it yeah, I do. I think it's a beautiful way to raise a child. It's a
Mm,
challenging way because she's got a loud platform with her voice, but also it's beautiful because she knows that that voice that she has is so important in this world and to her mommies.
beautiful.
I have two more sage pieces of advice
Mm,
that come from this.
right.
One, you can say anything you want to say as long as you wait, what does it
As
say?
long as you say it with the right heart.
Right.
Uh,
You can say anything
You
to
can say anything
anyone.
to anybody as long as your
Mhm.
heart about it is in the right place.
And then the second thing along those lines is do say something. Like,
Mhm.
do speak your truth. So many times I've heard adults and clients
mm,
say, in fact, I have a client example. I was working with a kiddo in residential, and this was their first, like, second or third time, and very contentious relationship with the caregiver. The caregiver loved them, they loved the caregiver, but there was no honesty.
Mm.
And the thing that really sticks with me is so trivial, but like it just kind of broke open my mind as to the why this was such a contentious relationship. In that it was this client's birthday, and they knew that their caregiver was going to make this particular meal, but it wasn't their favorite. And
Mm.
this client was 15 and had lived with their
mm,
caregiver since they were two
mm,
or three. And I said, your caregiver doesn't know that this isn't your favorite meal and they make it for you every birthday. Why wouldn't you just tell them your favorite meal is the other thing they make? And they said, I can't tell them that. What would I say about all these other years where I've told them it was my favorite? And I'm like, what? So that little example just kind of resonated for me. And Alisha and I come from very, very different families. And so one of the families is a little bit more like this, where we don't always just say everything that's on our mind. And my family is, we say it all rough and raw. And there's a balance in the middle of that. And
mhm,
and I think very well of
mm,
speak your truth, but speak it with the right heart. And I
Mhm.
think
mm.
those things have allowed us to navigate our marriage and business successfully.
Um, as we move closer to bringing closure today, a footnote is I would like to meet with you again to focus on supervision, since you're both play therapist supervisors. I think there's some wisdom and creativity that we could platform and present. At this point, though, it might be um, authentic to bring a figure, one from each of you, to face the other's figure and to speak to each other, and then to turn and let your figure speak to the world. So
Ooh.
returning to the symbolic, which, and it's fine to have both figures, but if there's one figure that you would like to select, and bringing it up to the camera so that both figures now come full circle and face each other. Well, and I like to encourage, some of this can be certainly said in silence. It's none of the world's business what clients want to say, because that's where we build trust and a foundation. But there might be something after you say your piece with each other in silence that you might want to share, and then allow the figure or figures to turn to the world and
Mm.
give voice. Let them give voice for what you want to say through the figures. So let's start with you, with each other. Select one or both of your figures and bring them up so they're facing each other.
The ones that we showed earlier or different
Yes.
ones?
Oh, well, anything you
Yes.
want at this point.
Mm. Mm.
And this is great couples work, as well as parent-child work.
We both grabbed different ones.
We did.
So here's just so that everyone kind of knows what we're working with already.
Okay.
So this is called our bot.
Say it
And
again.
this one's our love bot.
Love bot.
Love bot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
a lighthouse.
Lighthouse.
Okay. Now, for them to encounter each other and to have that I thou, that existential moment of appreciation, gratitude in silence, take a few seconds and we'll just all be silent and present with you while they speak from their heart. Just, yeah. Were they able to hear each other? Yeah.
I feel like it.
Is there some part of that intimacy that you'd like to share with us?
Yes,
Go ahead.
So Alisha made this piece after me, because I tease that I'm not very deep and I'm just, I'm kind of like a robot. Program me and I will do exactly what you want, just because I'm on the spectrum and that's how my brain works. So the interesting thing about this dynamic is, in my head, outside in the world, I'm really big and strong and smart and like really elevated. And the interesting thing about the pieces that we just chose is what the truth is in that I'm really kind of, when it comes to the world, like not a really big, because I don't understand it. So I'm kind of small in the world.
Mhm.
And Alisha is like that big, safe beacon that I look for out in the world, so I can stay on track and I don't get lost and I don't get overwhelmed and just hide. And so the reality is, when it comes to the two of us, I'm probably the smaller presence and she is the ginormous beacon of light, which is interesting.
And for me, it feels like the communication is we have something, our connection, the love that we have for each other, the love that we have for people that others need. So let's just stay still and let's just turn our light on and let them come as they need to. Let's just be a guiding light together. I mean, even the fact that like it's an exposed, vulnerable heart.
Yes.
It's an open heart.
Yeah.
And so it's like when we combine both of them, that offers something to the world that the world needs. I feel that the world
Yes.
is desperately searching for the connection, the love, the light, the hope, right? So it's yeah, to me,
You're
like
so
putting
right.
those two figures together feels like a little bit of a map to hope, you know?
Yeah, that's beautiful. If your figures could turn now to the world, what would they say to us? What do you imagine? What do we need to hear just today in the here and now? What would they like to say to us?
Go ahead.
Mine says, do not be afraid to be yourself. Be who you are, and you will find the people that will embrace that, protect that, celebrate that, allow for it to continue. So just be who you are.
Beautiful.
And mine is, this is who we each are. Each one of us. Each one of us have a light inside of us that someone else needs. The lights may be different colors, the lights may look different, have different levels of warmth to them, but I am you. So don't be afraid when you figure this out. Don't be afraid to turn your light on and let people find you, be guided.
Beautiful. And from my view, to see the little opening for the heart and the little opening for the light, and how they're both held in your figures, in the wisdoms that you've shared. Kat and Ash, it's such a pleasure. of joy to be with you. There's so much richness and a number of rabbit holes that we could easily go into more depth. So
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we will set up another
Yes.
time to trace through those. Um, a- and and that doesn't have to be just play therapy. It could be more about the case consultation, um, how you work with in supervision, what you want changed in the training and education of therapists. These are different avenues that I feel you have much to offer and to bring. So I'm going to thank you very much. Is there a final aloha, a final word that you would like to say?
Mm, such an honor to be
Yeah.
a part of this, truly. So I
Yeah.
don't have anything final, just other
Great.
than
No,
really
just you.
honored.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, working with you, Dee, I love it. It has opened up creative portals in me. I've told you
Oh,
this,
mm,
that have yet to be closed. And so it's always an honor to work
yeah.
with you and to learn from you and learn with you. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Um, and for you out there, thank you for being with us on this journey. The wisdoms that we share, the wisdoms that Kat and Ash have been so generous in giving us. Let's take some time and incorporate and step into what is meaningful for you. Who is the person of the therapist? And how can we continue in that rippling out for hope and for healing? For now, everyone take very good care. Bye-bye now.